So today I'm just going to spend some time trying to. I think I'm just going to study in the beginning the editor sync tabs. I don't remember the name exactly, but the class from the editor that creates the sync tabs. And yeah, this class here basically. And it is kind of different than the way that I'm trying to do. So as far as I understand, the way that they do it on GDScript is that they have a normal tab container on one class that handles the transition between different GDScript files. And then they change the way that the tab works to display it on the horizontal side instead of on top, which is the default way that the tab container works. And then they have another tab, which is the tab for the scenes, for switching between scenes. And what I think I have to do is to implement the sync tabs on the class that manages the files in order to achieve like a similar logic that the one that they have on VS Code is. So basically I'm trying to create a class that manages the different code editor components or code editor classes. But I'm not 100% sure if that's necessary or not. But I think that's better to try to do it this way in the beginning, because it's like I'm probably gonna have to override the behavior of tab container. So what I'm thinking about doing is translating this logic here from this class into the one that I have there. It's basically gonna be a copy in the beginning, and then I'm gonna see if I can move some functionality from the tab container to this other class. And I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna have to change the drawing logic. I think that's gonna be the hardest part probably. So I'm gonna have to translate from tab container to this class here. So that's what I'm gonna try to do. Obviously, I'm not really sure how long it's gonna take. So this is the next step to implement the file editor. I couldn't find a very good way to set the initial position of the pop-up. So it just puts like a number that I thought it makes sense there. But it might be like it's not the best because it's not anchored to the thing, but I think that I'm just gonna leave it like that for now. And it's just a detail that is not as important as the other parts. So that's the reason why I'm gonna focus more on the other parts and try to implement everything else. And then maybe in the future come back and try to implement try to improve this stuff. I'm just gonna show the beginning. Also created, so I did a bunch of merges and like deleted some branches. Like essentially I'm working with 2 branches only, obviously because I want to make it as simple as possible. I don't like using Git that much. I just like obviously, and just based on like what other smart people say, which I think it makes a lot of sense. You just try to simplify as much as possible instead of and then only adding complexity as you need it. So that's the principle that I'm trying to follow. And for that reason, I'm trying to. I don't like spending much time thinking about doing different merges and different branches and stuff like that. So the way that I'm doing is just creating another branch every time I want to make a major change, and then I just do a bunch of stuff, and then when I feel like a major milestone, like kind of like major milestone was achieved, I commit everything, and then I merge with the master, and then I'm deleting the branch I was working on, and then I create another branch. That's basically what I'm doing. I think now the last thing that I did was to create this branch for the sync tabs class. I think that's the last thing that I did. Oh, and from what I remember, there were some problems as well that I had last stream. I don't remember exactly what they were. Actually, maybe I have to figure this out as well, because when you type here and you press here, it throws this error here. But it's not that big of a deal because Like maybe figuring out how to not show the error is fine, but it's still like working as supposed to work. Or maybe changing this to an icon makes sense. But it doesn't matter that much, I think. Oh, I think that it was the icon here. So yeah, I figured out. So there are both things that I had to figure out. One was how to close this component here on the window when you have, because this class here essentially is a class that inherits from window, and then when you don't set a flag for the window to not have a tab, which is another thing that shows up on top, it displays an icon, a closing icon, but it doesn't have any logic built into it. So, and I was trying to figure it out, and the way that you do it is very simple. It's just putting another signal on the class that inherits from the window class, which I'm going to show there. And then you implement your custom logic to close the pop-up. So it looks like this is on the... I'm going to see if I can... The symbol crafter 36... Symbol crafter... Actually... I think it's no 3196. Yeah, so it's here. Stuff. So it's saying that this is empty when I try to replace there. It's probably not that big of a deal. I could put, instead of a message, it just could return, if that's the case here. Oh, I think I'm just gonna leave it like this, and then I'll think about it later if it's necessary. And so it was on this thing here. So basically this is the event, and this event also, like, you can put this notification on normal windows. It's just when it closes a window, it's gonna call this notification for all the classes. So what you have to do is just put the logic here, and that's gonna allow you to close the window after you click the pop-up there. And in order to show, you have to set the flag, which I think I removed. Is one of these flags here. Yeah, this flag here. So if I comment this flag, it's going to show the top there, and it's going to show the other icon. And they manually draw the icon on the class. I think it's on the viewport class. I think it's close icon, the name. Something, yeah. So it's basically this here. So they create the icon on the input function. And that's the reason why I couldn't find, because it's not like part of the class. They just create on the inputs. And this class here, both the viewports and the window class, is mainly using the display server class to actually work with the operational system to create the actual window. So these classes work like an interface with the OS functionality to create the window. And the way that the dragging works is based on this GUI value here, which is also kind of weird. And then I did some like select modification. I just basically try to implement the same logic that they use for actually moving based on the position. But then I did it based on the icon that I have there instead, which is like a button. But it's basically very simple. It's just setting a flag to true and false for mouse down and mouse up, and then on the movement you calculate the changes in position. And those changes in position I think I got from this logic here. So it's based on this GUI. There's a flag. One of these flags yeah, I think it's this flag here that determines when the window starts moving or not. And for the close is for the events to set the flag to actually close the window. So based on this close flag here that I saw that they call the notification to allow you to implement custom logic there. And this input from the viewport is called from the... Yeah, I think it's from the window class. So the window class is gonna have the functionality to parse the actual inputs using the operational system function. The thing, it might be on the display actually, the display server. I think it's probably on the display server. So the flow is the display server. The window class creates a window using the display server class. The display server class implements the API functions for the operational system. So the base class is the display server. And depending which operational system you're using, you're going to have a different implementation, obviously, because it's going to different what kind of functions you have to use, which is basically the function that the operational system is going to provide to interact with the kernel, which interacts or manages the hardware. So it's basically like any normal C or C++ program, the operational system, and the function that they provide just the API to interface with the kernel. So I'm pretty sure it is the display server windows that is going to have. So the window class that you inherit from uses the display server window to actually create the window. And then the display server window is going to be the thing that parses the inputs on the main function. I think it's going to be, this one depends on the, so there is the main iterate, there is some key functions that are implemented on this file that are functions that are going to work for regardless of which build you're using. But there are other functions that are implemented for specific operational systems, because obviously they depend on which kind of operational system you're using. So I think that the parsing of inputs is one of those cases where I think it's going to be on Godot Windows or something like this, or OS. I forgot the name exactly. I think this is Windows, OS Windows. Yeah, I think it's this one. So on this, you're going to have the main loop. I think it's going to be. Thing is, I don't remember. Yeah, so this is basically, and obviously this is gonna vary. So like there's the base class, which is the OS class, and then depending which build you're using, you're gonna have another OS class that inherits from the base one, and then on the main functions, you're gonna have the calls to. I think that's is actually the other way around, because the entry point of the application is gonna be dependent on which OS class you're using. So from that main class, from the main entry point, which is based on the API of the operating system, is going to call these functions from the main, which are generic and are going to work for regardless of the builds, just to set up all the classes and stuff, the state that the engine is going to need. Then it goes back to a specific function from the OS, which is this one. And then this one calls the generic function from the main as well, which is the iteration, which is basically the game loop. But it does this for on the different operating system files in order to process the events for each one, because obviously which one of them is going to use a different class. But it uses with the display server here as well, which is the base class, in order to make. I think it is in order to allow you to. I'm not actually 100% sure, because I think you could go either way. Like you could use display server windows here because these are ready from Windows. But yeah, they probably have a reason for doing with the generic or the base class. Maybe just to enforce the standard that the other ones are gonna have. And then you have the display server that it is specific to each operating system. So in this case, these functions are gonna be from the Windows API. And the Windows is just a program, but because it's not open source, you only have access to the functions, but obviously you can look into the documentation. And it's going to explain what each function does. But this is like, it's as if you're calling the function from the program, which is the operating system, which is like the brain of the computer, that is going to manage the different processes and different threads and different kernel rings that are going to translate the information of the process, which is the virtual address space of the process, into the management of the actual hardware memory and the different places of the hardware through ports and communication protocols. They're going to change the states of and also using drivers like the Vulkan API in order to change the state of the screen. So these functions from the OS are predetermined, and they are going to parse the inputs of the window, because the operating system is the thing that is managing the window itself. So they are predefined on the operation system logic. It's going to have predefined functions to parse the inputs and to interact, select the mouse and everything else like that. And then these functions basically capture that. And then there's another function that is a standard for the operation system as well that they define on this class. I don't remember. I think you have to search. Like it's gonna be something that happens under the hood. So it's not explicitly here. Like after you call these functions here, it's gonna call the other function that they define because this happens through the operation system. So don't really see, I think. But you can find following the breakpoints, obviously, which is what I did. So I'm gonna have to manually search here. This is one of the functions that are like it calls after, but I think there's another one that it calls before. This one is for processing the keyboard inputs, and the previous one is for yeah. So it's this one basically. So this one you can see that there isn't anything like it's just a function and it's not connected to the class, and this works based on the Windows API. So I assume that I didn't look into the documentation yet, but obviously it makes sense. I think it's just common sense. After you call those functions from the operation system to process the inputs, it's going to allow you to define this function, which is what do you want to happen with the inputs that are being processed by the other functions. And then on here is going to make the bridge between the operation system, which is Windows, with the Godot class, which is this display server. So it gets the singleton and calls this function and passes the information, and this is information you're gonna find on the documentation, which is just standard stuff that the inputs are gonna send to the function. Just searching for the function. It's basically gonna be this function here, and there's the standard parameters. Then they call this function, and this function is the one that is going to have the switch statement that is going to parse the message. So it parses different standard events that Windows has. And then for each one of them, it's going to call some functions, and it's from here that it's going to call the function from the viewport. I think it's on the push input or something like that. And the viewport is going to have the logic to do the dragging of the window. So the viewport is the class that actually does it, but it's connected through the display server, which is connected through the window. So based on this, I just got the logic from the classes, and I think I put on the inputs of this one. And if you want the input to work from C++, you have to set the process input to true. I think there was an error message that I got, so I'm going to see there again. Basically did it like this. Yeah, so they were using a different function to see if the element is visible or not because they were inheriting from a different class. But this one basically checks or returns whether or not the node is visible on the string. And then I'm setting the process input to whether or not, based on whether or not it is visible. So I have to set this to true if you want the input function to run, which is basically this function, and the other one is for the unhandled inputs. And the difference between them is the hierarchy of when the inputs are going to be processed. So if you want, it's like bubbling on the browser. So every time that you click a node inside of the browser, the input's going to start at the top of the tree, and then it's going to traverse all the way through that input, and then it's going to bubble back to the top. And if you don't want the events to be triggered on the classes that are parents from where the event was triggered, then you have to set stop propagation to true, or you have to call stop event propagation. or one of those functions, and then the event's not gonna propagate to the other classes. And it's the same logic here on Godot. And I think unhandled inputs like higher up. So if you call logic on the input and you call accept event from input, then it's not gonna run the logic from unhandled inputs. It might be the other way around, I don't remember really well. But basically here is the logic. I just copied and then I changed some, like, just lightly changed the logic to change the position of this class based on the movement of the mouse. And based on this flag variable, it's basically flipped on mouse down and mouse up. And this allows me to implement the dragging logic on the rectangle there. Is this dragging grabber. I think I'm gonna go back. I'm not gonna show this, so now I have to focus on the other stuff. So I think that's I'm like I said before, I'm not really sure if it is worth it to try to implement with this class. I think the main reason for trying to implement with this class instead of just using the tab container to put the logic. So using the tab container would be a lot easier. Like all you have to do is just put the tab container on the FileEditor class, and then every time you add a child to the tab container, is just gonna create another tab automatically, and it's gonna change the way that it draws the tabs because they created all this logic on the tab container. So if I use the tab container class, like I get that automatically. But the problem with that is that I think it limits the functionality that I can put on the tabs and the way that they're gonna be displayed. But I'm not 100% sure about that. And I remember from what I remember, I talked to ChatGPT a little bit, and I thought about the trade-offs as well. And I think that like this approach, the downside is that it's harder on the beginning because you have to change everything, and I might have to like re-implement the same logic. But on the flip side, it's better because it allows me to have more flexibility in case I want to. And I think that's probably gonna be something that I want to do in the future, because I think that's probably likely that I'm gonna want to change the design of the thing. So obviously the challenge is like how to, because the weird thing and the thing that is kind of confused is that on the way that they did it here is different than the way that I'm trying to do. But maybe I should try to remember this first. So like on the editor node, they're gonna initialize this editor scene tabs. And the editor scene tabs logic is related to the scenes. It's not related to the GDScripts. But the GDScript component is inside of the scene file, depending on the logic that they have there to set up the state, the overall state of what's going to be shown. So I'm gonna, or maybe I think it's probably actually better to open from the actual executable, so I don't have to keep pressing F5 and fuck up the files here. But what I have to do is like cut the logic related to tab container from the class that manages the state, which I think is called text editor. Is either called text editor or script text editor. I don't remember which one it is. But it's basically this relationship here, I think. And I think it's probably script text editor. Like one of these classes is actually maybe it might be the script editor class. So I think it's the script editor class. Yeah, the script editor class manages the whole state of everything. Then the script text editor manages the states of the IDE, like the file, what's going to be shown on the file in the minimap. And the script text editor is going to use the tab container to display the different GDScript files on the other. So it has the other components on the left, which I'm not going to do. That other components uses the tab container to switch the state, to switch what script's going to be shown. So when you click here, it's going to show this. So the editor sync tabs is what controls these files here, like this tab here. But these tabs here of the scripts is a tab container. And the whole state of this component here, I think is the script editor that does. The file itself is the script text editor. So the script editor is going to use the script text editor to manage the states of what's shown here. And it's going to have another class that manages the state of what's shown here. And the logic here to switch tabs is going to be a tab container. And this part I'm not so sure how they do it, because obviously they're changing the behavior of tab container, because the normal behavior is that the tabs are going to be shown, like this here of the sing and the import are tab containers as well. So I think that the default behavior is like this one for the tabs. But for this one is obviously here, so obviously they do something there that I don't understand very well. But I don't wanna, like, I'm not gonna do it this way either way. So I don't want to spend a bunch of time on that. But I do think that I have to at least try to understand or clarify a little bit. Because I think what I have to do is like I have to like slice this logic that they use here, or figure out like, but maybe it's not productive to focus on this. I should just focus on the tab container. I think focus on the tab container is probably better, because I kind of already understand the logic to some degree of tab container and how it works, and I have to like take only the logic of tab container that I think I'm gonna need on the other class, and I have to merge on the other class. So the challenge is like which parts to take from the editor sync tabs initially, and then how to integrate the parts of the tab container with those parts. So I have to kind of merge the two classes. And the challenge is what is the best strategy to do this. It is another annoying thing that I'm not really sure if I'm going to change, because like the errors here have been shown because of the settings components that I did there, and just to prevent the functions from like from running before the singleton that is responsible for the settings is initialized. But it's just kind of like, it doesn't matter that much, the errors, but it's kind of annoying because it shows a bunch of them and then like it clouds the thing. So like what I can do is just switch to put a condition and return instead of putting a message. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this class is the one that manages everything. And they're gonna create the actual, it's kind of confusing to be honest. And I'm not really sure why they did it this way. But obviously, I'm sure that there are reasons for it. But I think it might be like a consequence of the overall design of the other classes. Like the reason why this class is done this way, like might have to do with Sting functionality, stuff like that. Resources. From what I remember, it's gonna be called, I think it's switch tab or something. Yeah, on the function that switches the tabs is gonna have some logic like if you don't have any tabs or something like that, it's gonna initialize the other class, and the other class is done. Is like the same pattern. Is just object-oriented programming, so the same pattern of the other ones, where you have a base class, and then depending on which language you're using, you're gonna have derived classes. And the derived classes are the ones that I actually use, which is kind of annoying because you have to run to see what the classes actually are. So this one uses the find replace bar. So they initialize find and replace bar here, and then they add they add on this one. And I think they're gonna set as well on the other class, because the other class requires a pointer from the code editor class or script text editor. But I think on the way that I did there is kind of different. So it's probably on another function. It's probably on the function that they initialize the class, which I'm pretty sure is going to be based on this. So from what I remember, this type container here is this files here. So it's either this one or another one, but I'm pretty sure that it comes from a tab container. A tab changed, so I think it's going to be on this function. Oh, this is not this one. That should be. Or maybe it is this one. It is a function that I have the breakpoints. But it's been some time since I've done this, so I don't remember really well. I'm probably gonna have to go over again to remember. Yeah, I think it's go to tab. This is the function. Yeah, I'm 100% sure that this is the one because I have the breakpoint there and I kind of remember. At some point here is going to call some other function that is gonna initialize the script text editor. And I think is like this is the base class. I don't remember the relationship between the classes very well. Like I think that on the other class, like this class is the base, and then there's a class that derives from this one, and then on that class is gonna use the script text editor. I know there's a connection between them, but I don't remember really well. And maybe it's not this function. Obviously, I'm gonna go over again, but I'm just trying to see if I can remember so I don't spend a bunch of time snapping into. Maybe actually, I think I did on the schedule draw there. Yeah, I have on the schedule draw now that I remember. Is this flow here? So this one is from the file system doc to the script editor. Yeah, so it's gonna be editor resources, push item, edit current. Yeah, so this is the function that creates, and this is related to the function. That's why I remember this one. So this is the one, so it's gonna call this one at some point if it has a tab already. If it doesn't, I think it creates the thing for the first time. So this flow of functions here is basically what happens after you, I think, open a JavaScript file from, so like after you select the JavaScript file and you click open here, that's the flow of functions that is gonna run there. So this class here is the file system doc. So when you open, it's gonna go through this. It's gonna load resource, then edit. So it does the bridge between them with the inspector doc. Then it calls this to edit the file And I think if it doesn't have the tab already, it's gonna create or something like this. Yeah, so this is the place. I remember now. So this is the one. I think if the tab already exists, it's gonna call this function, should switch the tabs. It is kind of confusing, to be honest. Yeah, but I think this resource would be like the GDScript from the because when you create the file, I think on the original file system doc, they have functionality to create a GDScript class if the file you're creating is a script. So the moment you create a file, they have GDScript class, which is going to be the resource that they pass there. This one, and then they cast to the script here, because it could be a C# script as well. Then based on this, they check to see if it's already a part of the tab container, probably. And if it is, then it's gonna switch the tabs by calling the other function. If it isn't, then it creates the other file to create the visual representation of the script, which is basically the state here, I think. Just gonna be the script text editor. But I think it might be another class that creates the state of the whole thing. Yeah, so it's based on the tab container here. So if it doesn't have any tabs, it's gonna skip this in the beginning. So the first time that you open, it's gonna run through this. Then this one is gonna initialize the base class, I think. And then it's on the other function that's gonna update the states or something like that. Yeah, so I'm gonna run through this and I'm gonna go to that point there to remember. So probably the best. So I need to focus both on that. I think I'm gonna focus on that functionality just to remember which class it uses and how to think about the state of this true here. Maybe before I do that, I can search for some keywords there. So I'm pretty sure, yeah. So filter methods, filter scripts, filter methods here. Yeah, so this script editor is the class that manages the state of both of them. So I need to remember if the other one, like what is the link between the class that this class is going to initialize there on the edit function. On the right. So the function that creates the class, this function here, is gonna initialize the other class. So, and then the other class is the one that is gonna have this state, I think. So what I wanna remember is, does this create script text editor? So I wanna remember if this class in the middle that initializes here is gonna create one of these classes here to actually manage the state of the text. Because the one that I have on my stuff is one of these. Like I think I translated code text editor into this code editor class, and then I changed a bunch of stuff to change the design. So I'm basically going, yeah, this class is going to use this other class here. So the other one uses code edit, and then I changed to this one. And this one is like direct. It's like very similar to one of these classes here. Supposed to be very similar. So I think I have to clarify the relationship between one of these classes with this flow here in order to understand the context in which this one is used. Because for the editor sync tabs, I'm gonna have to manage these classes here. Because the state of each file is gonna be handled by this one, and the editor sync tabs is gonna manage the transition between the states and create the visual tabs. So the way that it works on this one is with the tab container that I showed on the script editor class. That handles the logic to switch between them, and it's kind of different because it's on the files here. And then the code editor version of them, like the class that they use, which would be my code editor, is going to be that class that initializes the thing on the edit function. And the sync tabs is the thing that I wanna visually replace. I think I'm not gonna put the add button. I'm gonna try to do it like in a similar way that VS Code is, but I might like do different stuff later, like depending on what do I think that it might be interesting to implement. So I'm gonna go over with the debugger again, try to remember. Once I remember the relationship between the two classes, then I spend some time on the going over the sync tabs. I think I should just like go manually over the editor sync tabs class, and I should just copy parts by parts because there isn't much from this class that I think I need to pass. Like some more visual stuff that I have to do here, I think. Because they're basically implementing the same functionality of the tab container, like similar functionality of tab container, but they're using different classes to do that. I think they use this panel container and this HBox container to manage the tabs. So what I have to see from this class is, and I have to obviously remove everything that is related to. So I think probably the best thing to do is just copy everything on this one, and then remove everything that is related to editor node. I just leave the rest and then test to see what it looks like. And I need to focus on how do they do the drawing logic, because that's gonna be the part that is very annoying, because I think I'm gonna have to merge with the tab container functionality. But it might be done through the other classes, yeah, because there isn't anything here. So I think the drawing is just handled by the thing is I never tested to see what happens when you have multiple different tabs. So I think I'm gonna have to test this on the binary. Like open the binary without the debugger, then create a bunch of different things. Because on the tab container, I do remember that they have logic to draw the arrows there and to draw the offsets and the positions. And I do remember it's very annoying to deal with that. Maybe you should write this down here. So I think I'm gonna explain when I move the type container, I'm gonna explain how it works. But it basically works. There is a function that they have on the node class that they call every time you add the child to the node, which is a virtual function. So it allows you to override that function on different classes that inherit from node. If you want to add extra functionality every time you add a child to that node or remove a child. And that's basically how they do it on the type container. So when you add a child normally to a type container, they have that function that's gonna have additional logic that allows them to create the tabs based on that node through the tab bar that is initialized inside of the tab container. So the tab bar is the class that manages the tabs, and the control nodes are directly put on the tab container. But I think it's called add child notify. So on that function, they're gonna add the tab to the tab container based on the information. I think is the name of the control node that is added to the tab container. So the control goes directly on the tab container, and by proxy on that function, they use the tab bar from the tab container to manage the tabs, so the visual display. So the drawing of the tabs is managed on the tab bar class, but the management of the nodes are done through the tab container. And I think the reason why it's done that way, from what I remember from reading some of the issues on GitHub is that initially they had the tab bar class, and then they merged the two. So I think that's the reason why they did it like this. So they probably just pushed the functionality or passed the functionality to tab container, and then just implement the tab bar inside of tab container to handle the tab bar logic. So this is the function. Yeah, so it's gonna create the script editor base class. And this is gonna be a text editor. I think it depends on how many you have. Yeah, so it is the script text editor. So the script text editor, yeah, this one uses the code text editor. The code text editor is the one that uses code edit. And I think code text editor is the one that I kind of translated to this code editor class here. So I think that the main reason for having the script text editor is just that it's going to be basically the same as code text editor, but it's going to have functionality specific to GDScript. So it makes more sense for me to translate from code text editor instead. The thing is, I don't remember if I think I didn't do this. So maybe I need to copy this stuff. No, I'm pretty sure that I did this. Actually, I'm not really sure. I do remember that there are getter functions on my stuff there. I think it's code editor, but it's BM code editor. Is it the name? I think that's the getter stuff was on symbol crafter, right? No, it was on text visualizer. I think I passed through text visualizer. Let me see. Yeah, so I have these ones, but I think I didn't. So these ones were probably from the code text editor class. So they add these additional ones here. So I should probably move these ones to code editor, to my code editor class. Or I can put them directly on the, I think it makes more sense to put them directly on the text visualizer. Because I think that the behavior of breakpoints and stuff like that is going to be the same for all the languages, because it's just a visual thing from the editor, so it's basically the same. What changes is the backend, obviously. So like how the language is parsed and how to make sense of where you put each thing, but the visual representation can be the same for all the languages. So I think it makes more sense to put on text visualizer. And then if I want to allow customization, I just create other functions that allow to change the state of this one, either based on settings or on the other classes. So I think it makes more sense. I think that is weird is that here they use the number one, and I think that on code text editor it was a variable, so like it might be the same number. Because I think on the way that I did, this one is gonna be number one, I think. Yeah, the other one is number 0. And I did it like this because it's easier to initialize. And the main gutter is here. For the gutter is here. Maybe we should put them together. So, so the question would be if this overrides the other one. This is the same number. So based on this, I think it does. But this kind of stuff is probably better to... Maybe I should write down to remember to move this stuff. Oh, so this is like the breakpoint between the backend and the front end. So obviously this class is going to be responsible for managing the logic of where to put the breakpoints, I think. And the other one is the visual representation. So I should probably not do this because it's going to depend on the language. It's going to depend on the way that I do the backend there, I think. So maybe it was from another class. I think it's on the code edit. Yeah, the code edit class is the one that has the gutters. So this one uses the code edit. So I moved the logic from code edit for the gutters. I don't remember if I... Yeah, I think that the thing that is weird is that I had to focus on other stuff, and then I went back to this one to finish the find and replace bar. But I don't remember exactly if I moved everything from this one to the other one. But I think that the step that I didn't move is probably because it's related to GDScript or some specific functionality that is related to languages. So it doesn't make sense for me to move. So what is the other thing that I was trying to... So maybe I should... I think I'm gonna put on this on SkyDraw there the connection between the classes, and then I can move on to focusing on the Steam bar for now. Then I'll go back to see more how they change the tab container to work there on the way that they have. Yeah, so this is the logic that I moved there to add the gutters. I'm gonna be right back. Probably remove this. It's kind of annoying. So probably the best thing to do is just copy editor syntax to the class that I have there. So write down the includes statements. Yeah, the main thing to focus on the editor syntax is just to study the flow of what happens after you add a scene. And I also need to see what happens when it overflows. I think probably it makes more sense to study what happens after you add a scene first, because maybe it will allow me to understand automatically what's gonna happen when it overflows. I think it's probably the best thing to do. There is a function here. And so it's based on signals. But this is the thing. Because this is probably going to be logic just related to managing the scenes and not stuff related to the visual representation. Update sync tabs. So this is the function probably. So what I have to do probably is just remove this logic related to scene editor scenes, and then just move the logic from tab container to call this every time that a child is added. And then I move the state to this class instead, based on the child counts probably. I think initially I'm gonna do like this, but I'm probably gonna change because it has to depend on the signals, I think. Now signals, I think I have to like create functions that are gonna change the state directly. And then on the file editor class, which is the class that is gonna use this, is gonna listen to signals. Then the signal receives the path of the file. The file editor class reads the file, and based on that, it opens a tab or uses this class, calls a function from this class to create a tab. Actually, it should set the state of the code editor. Yeah, so it creates based on the file object that it saves on its state, it creates the code editor class and updates the state of the code editor, and then adds the code editor as a child of the string tabs. Yeah, so basically the file editor is going to be the bridge between the editor syntax and the code editor class. And it's going to change the state based on the signals that come from the file system or from some other node. So I'm gonna copy everything from this into the I'm gonna remove this. It's not gonna be a single. There's two options here. One is to replace. So the get team constant is gonna get the constant from the team, as the name says, and they most likely are defining this on the editor team. So I think it's the editor team is kind of different because they're I think it's this class or this file that initializes the thing. So it's gonna set the constants based on this, which comes from this value here. So one option is to change to 16 there instead of using this. And this basically overrides the constants on the thing. So when the control node, I think it's control node, is going to update the thing, or yeah, update the thing for the class. Is gonna look for the theme DB. It's gonna use the theme DB to get the context for the theme, I think, which is gonna traverse the tree looking for a thing. And the first thing that it finds on the hierarchy is gonna use, which is gonna be either some custom theme you set, or the default thing that it has, or the editor thing. And this allows you to put the value on a hash map on the control node class. So it first checks to see if it has one of these values on the hash map. So I think I can replace this with 16, or I can add the same value on the default icon. The problem is if I put like if I put on the default theme, I think it doesn't make a lot of sense. Because I think the main benefit of putting on a theme is if you make something related to settings, like from the settings allows you to change the theme values, which is probably what they are doing on the editor. And then because you're getting from that theme, it's gonna get the updated value instead of getting the static 16 value. But if I put it on the default theme, then unless I make the settings related to the default theme, or the other option obviously is create another theme, but then it gets into the more annoying parts of structuring the themes in certain ways. So let me think of this. I think I need to I'm gonna make a variable on this class here. And then I'm gonna just put this there. Then if I want in the future, I can put the logic somewhere else. So this again is gonna get from the theme from the editor. But if we remove, it's gonna get from the default theme. And the only difference is like you need to have the SVG, but I believe I checked this later. But this I'm probably gonna remove this, which is that button, I think. So on the editor icons is gonna be the ads, this ad here, and on the default themes this ad. So just use get theme icon. It's gonna get that icon that is initialized on this thing here with the set icon on the default theme. I need to put the where it comes from if I do like this. It's gonna be from this color picker. And so it's gonna be add preset, I think. And first is the name and then the type. So I think it is like this. Hmm. It's kind of annoying as well. Hmm. I have basically the same thing. I just translated the editor settings, I think, or the default settings to this other class, but it's kind of annoying. I probably have this thing here, but the problem is that it's gonna get into the problem of the errors there, because I'm gonna check to see. I have to check to see if the editor the BM settings singleton exists, and then I'm forced to use the class with the settings. So maybe it's better to just use a variable for this as well. I'm just gonna comment this out and I'll think about this later. So obviously, like I'm thinking about the flow, how the flow is gonna work. So because based on the way that I'm thinking, I'm gonna try to implement the same way that tab container does with the child name. So like I'm thinking about what happens when you change the name of the file. So the file is gonna be on another component, which is gonna be the file system presenter. So when you rename the file, you should send a signal. Then this class should have the other class, the FileEditor class, is gonna listen to the signal. Is gonna call a function from this class to change the tab. But if the name is based on the node, the child node, then how would that work? Like the problem is that I'm gonna have to. Maybe it's better to decouple the name from the name of the tab from the name of the node, and then I couple them on the FileEditor class. It's probably like it's not very good because what happens if someone puts the name of a file exactly the same of a node that already exists on the scene? It's gonna be a problem. So I think I should make the name of the tab should be different. But then the problem is like, and maybe I create a function. Based on the function, I create the tab. But the issue is that it has to be linked through the child, I think, because it makes more sense. Like the question is how to synchronize the. I think the flow is gonna be to receive a signal with the path of the file, and then read the file, and then I initialize the. Uh, with the path, I'm gonna have the name as well. The name of the file. So I think I need a hash map on the file editor. Then I link the name with the symbol crafter class. And I manage the connection. So on this class would be, then like how would I add the tab to this class? Because this one would have to manage the logic. Obviously, what happens when you switch the tabs, I think. Or maybe all these other logics gonna be on the other class, and this one is just a visual representation. I mean, that's probably a better way to do it. So if that was the case, then I could like there wouldn't need to have like a maybe on the order of the files. I think the order has to be based on how you open. It's better. But then when you switch, so you would only need the name. So I think I need to keep track of the names and the index of the tabs, and the name comes from outside. Then the logic to change what is displayed happens on the other class. So the event would be here. And the problem is like it's gonna get into the same issue. Like it is a fundamental issue, I think, with the way that the classes work, because when you do it in this way, it's just like on the other one that I had to put pointers of both classes on each other, which feels kind of dumb because it kind of defeats the purpose of doing two different classes in the first place. But I think it makes more sense to make two different classes because it's a better design. Because it makes it easier to think about the logic for each class. It's obviously separated. But like the way that I'm thinking is like what happens when you like do this, for example. Like the event would have to be on this class here, the type container class. But then I need to change the state of the parent class, the class that initializes this one, in order to update the, or like a better example is when you switch tabs, because then both classes need to be updated. Like this one I can keep on the same class because it's just changing the order of the tabs. But if I click on another one, then obviously I can emit signal, but then I'm not sure if it's the best. Maybe emitting the signal is the best way to do it. Like I made a signal with the index or with the file name. So the question is who is gonna keep track of all the symbol crafter nodes? That's the question. Hmm. Let me think of this. Because like if this class manages the state of the manages all symbol crafters, then like what is the point of having the other one? Because this one would encapsulate everything already. Like, the only point would be if there's something else that I do on the other one. I do think it makes sense to have the other one, which just I'm gonna remove this function because like these things I'm gonna have to think about anyway when I do this other functionality. I'm just trying to clarify on my mind how it's gonna work. Like, I think it makes sense to have another class to handle other stuff, but I'm not really sure what it is yet. Because it makes sense from a first principles perspective on the model controller thing. That's like, it makes sense to isolate the logic to draw this stuff on this class, and then the other logic should be on the other one. But then it feels like an extra step, like an unnecessary extra step, because it makes more sense to couple the symbol crafter with this class here, the logic of the symbol crafter. Because if I put the symbol crafters on this class, then it obviously makes it a lot easier to change the state of what's being shown. So like this class would have the inputs. Then when you click here, it would be inside of the input, and then you would just call a function from this one to switch which symbol crafter is being shown based on the index of the tab. So I think that makes more sense. So, but the question is like, is there anything else that the other class would do? Because on the other class, I think I'm initializing. Like the idea that I had was to initialize this class, but now I don't remember if I. Because it's been a long time. I think I was gonna initialize. Yeah, this class and then the symbol crafter on the other one, and then connect them both through this one. Hmm. Maybe should ask ChatGPT. It's like obviously, if it is better to leave in one class, then I should either rename this to FileEditor or just move this code to this files here and then remove the other file. Unless I put the inputs on this class here. If I put the input on this class, I think the other class is gonna have the inputs as well. A symbol crafter, the text visualizer has the inputs for what's gonna happen inside of the text state. And it makes more sense to put the inputs on the other one. So I think it wouldn't make sense to put the inputs on this one, because it would be kind of pointless. It's better to put on this one, I think. If it's better to put on this one, it makes more sense to connect them directly, I think. And if it's better to put them directly, I would have just a pointer to this class here on this one, which feels kind of useless. Because what else would I do here? Because if it is to synchronize everything, I can do it from the other one as well. Just like put extra functions and then put the signals on the other one. Yeah, but the question is how this would change the overall thing. I think that this is better actually. I'm gonna do this. So I'm gonna move the logic to FileEditor and I'm gonna remove this class. I think it makes more sense to only have one, and then the FileEditor handles the tab. Then maybe later if I figure out that's, but actually, I do remember that it is the inputs on tab container are kind of annoying. Yeah, because they're gonna be on the tab bar. I do remember that this part was annoying when I was trying to figure out other stuff. Hmm. The thing is different because a tab container works as its own class. So like I can put the tab container to make the doc directly, but the behavior is based on the control nodes that are external and are added as children. And on this case, it wouldn't be because I would have to keep track. Actually, maybe it is the same thing because I can make the logic based on the children. The problem is that it kind of decouples the. So the question is, so there's one approach which is to put the tab. So on this second approach, I would synchronize them with signals, but I would have to keep track of the states or organize the states on the file editor. So file editor keeps track of symbol crafter pointers and then connects that or does the bridge with the indexes on the file editor tab container. And then every time that's either one of them changes, the signals go through file editor. And the first approach, so like this approach, I think it makes more sense from a design perspective. I think that it might be more likely that it scales better because of other functionality that I might not be thinking right now and I might want to implement later. But the first approach is simpler and probably faster because obviously it makes more sense to keep track of the state on the class itself, the class that handles the tabs. Oh, actually, I just realized why they don't have the logic for drawing is because the drawing is being done through the tab bar. So it's not that hard actually. So like the overflow is gonna be the same way that it works on tab container because the overflow is being done by the tab bar on this class. It's basically the same thing that the tab container does. Initialize tab bar here. But the weird thing is that this one doesn't have so maybe we should investigate what happens when you add a sing. I would just probably gonna call these functions. Yeah, I have to investigate the add button. I think. So what happens after you add? I think it's gonna be. Oh, it's probably. I remember there is true, so I think it's probably instead of this one. Yeah, add a new thing. So like the main difference here is that on the original tab container, it adds directly as a child and then uses that add child notify to add the tab bar. And here is using this button, and then it does very similar logic, just uses the tab bar class to add the tab based on the editor node editor data. Hmm. I'm just trying to think. I have to spend time thinking about this because obviously it's pointless to do this stuff if I'm gonna change the design. I think it's better to think about this first. I'm stuck between these two different options here. I'm not really sure which one is better. I think that's the first one makes more sense initially. But my concern is that the other one makes more sense based on the previous classes that I did. I think it makes more sense to separate them. I think it comes down to whether or not there is additional logic and like what would be the implication of that. I think the main implication is how to synchronize the states. So how to synchronize the state of the tabs with the state of the stuff that they show. I think if I do the but either way, no, if I do the second way, then the logic is probably gonna be closer to tab container logic, where I change the state of the file editor tab container class based on the children. So that's the second approach. Maybe not. Maybe the first approach is better to do it this way. Because then I would keep track in the same class. So it would be closer to the way that tab container works. And if I do it the first approach, I think it's closer to the way that tab container works. Then I create a function to add the child. I would have to. I think one of the problems is like how to set the name. And it has to be based on the file path, which depends on so if I do it the first way, this logic would be inside of the add child notify. And if I do it the second way, it would be on FileEditor, I think. Because then FileEditor keeps track. Yeah, it's basically this function here. And this is where they add the tab. And they add based on the child's, the node name. Like I said before, it's probably not very good to do like this. I can set the metadata of the nodes, but I think that's probably not very good as well. I think it's better to make it. So I think regardless of which class sends the signal, it's gonna be a signal that the class receives. I think I should assume that whatever class I'm gonna do there is gonna receive a signal with the path. Then from the path you can get the file by using get file function, I think, or get file name or something like that. So from that, yeah, so I would add the tab based on the file name. And the question is where to keep track of the state. So how can I clarify this? I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to see what it thinks. I need to think if there are other situations, but it's kind of hard though, because there might be. Uh, if I was going to implement the same stuff that VS Code does, then I think it's probably better to have the first approach. But there isn't too many things that would change. And maybe the thing is if I have other components, then they're gonna be on the tab container outside of the thing. So it would be a different thing, I think. But maybe let's say we want to have other file formats or stuff like that. Or would they change anything? I think it probably would. Yeah, so yeah, the benefit of the second approach is that it's more decoupled. So it gives you more freedom on which kind of node you use. So like it gives the option to use other nodes that are not files or not symbol crafter nodes. So for that reason, I think it might be better to, because then it opens a lot of possibilities of different things you can do. But the other option is that I can do those things from the other level, which is the type container that is gonna have this component inside. So like there is sure, but it might be. I think that's probably better to allow for both of the situations because it would be annoying. And maybe the other thing that I have to implement is the splitting logic, which I forgot about, and that's gonna be very hard to implement. I think it's better to leave that logic for later anyway. So, but that's gonna be, I think, inside of the code editor class. Yeah, but if that's the case, if I do have the logic, but if it is on the code editor, no, it doesn't make sense to be on the code editor, I think, because then you wouldn't allow for flexibility. I think it has to be on the, yeah. So for that reason, I think it's probably better to do on FileEditor. And the main reason why is because of the splitting, because then like it allows me to put different nodes to split. So I'm gonna ask ChatGPT there. I think for like this reason here, which I'm probably gonna have to try to implement at some point, the reason why you can split the nodes, it's probably better to go with the second approach, even though it doesn't seem the best now, because it's gonna force me to think in like maybe for this reason. But the thing is, I could do the same thing. Actually, not. Like maybe the file editor would be just to manage multiple different. But it doesn't make sense if it manages multiple different tabs. I think I can achieve the same thing with the approach, with the first approach, with the split. The main thing that I was thinking about is like, let's say I want to have other nodes. They are not symbol crafter nodes, and then the tab file editor tab container just manages the tabs. So if that was the case, would it be better to have this other file editor class that manages the states between the different nodes? But it's probably the same thing, like, because it would be like basically the same. I can do the logic very similar to the way that the tab container works on this file editor tab container, and just change the logic for like how it displays everything. Or I can just use tab container, because like when I look into the code here, it doesn't seem that, but it might be better because of the some stuff with the inputs and like the additional stuff here. If I want to customize the bar to show other stuff, then it's better to have another class, even if initially it works just like tab container. It's better to expand later, I think. But initially it could be, but if it was like that, then it might be better to have the file editor class anyway. Even though it seems kind of useless. Because the way that I was thinking is that even if you have other nodes, I can just make it the logic in the same way that the tab container is. That every time you add a node to this class, I just put the add child notify function, and then I just like move or change the logic so that it works on this one. And it could be very similar in the beginning. And then if I want to split, I think it has to be the same kind of thing. Yeah, splitting is a lot more complicated actually because it involves both classes. Actually, maybe not. Yeah, I think you would mainly involve this uh, the tab container class because it would be more about changing the position of the tabs on the layouts. But then for that reason, it might be better to have this data on the other class because the other class would like manage the overall size of the whole thing, and then it would split. Yeah, because I would need split container nodes, I think, if I implement this logic here. I would need to have something, but then like the input would be on the file editor class. So file editor receives the inputs when you click here. But this is gonna be annoying, I think, because I would have to figure out a way to. But if I listen, yeah, it's the same thing that they do there, where they listen to the signals on the tab bar and then they just put functions. So I'll just listen to the GUI input signal on the tab bar from the file editor, and then I would put some function on the file editor that would create a split node and then change the layout depending on which option is chosen. Let's see what this says. I'll be right back, and then I'm gonna listen to this, and then I'm gonna think more about it. I think it's kind of, and maybe I should implement Maybe I should implement the first approach for now, and then I'll think about it later if I want another one. I have to, but then like it's the same thing because I have to think which one is better to start with if I want to move to the other one. Because I do think that depending on this choice, it's gonna fundamentally change the logic of the class. Because obviously it's gonna change the way the information flows between them. So I think I need to spend some time thinking about this either way. I'll be right back. It's like a similar design. I imagine that you would say something like this, because it obviously makes sense. So like a similar kind of mindset from the other class that I did. So like file editor tab bar tab container would be like the front end and it handles the inputs. But in this case, it's kind of different because you have the control nodes that are separate that also handle inputs. But then you have this other class, which is the file editor, that works more as controller between them. Then the file editor is the one that is inserted on the tree and synchronizes the states based on signals. And then the file editor has additional logic to manage other stuff. But the question that I have, which is the one that I kind of did now, is about what is the best way to manage the nodes. Like the one option is to put the nodes on the file editor and then synchronize the file editor tab container from the file editor as well. The other one is to add them as a child of the file editor tab container, which is closer to the way the tab container works. And then just manage the file editor tab container state from the file editor. And maybe some other stuff, like some other node information or some other visual information that is more related to both classes, or something like this. So I think the main purpose of creating the other class is just for adding flexibility or allowing the option to have flexibility on the way that the tabs are being drawn. I try to add extra information if I want to, like these buttons here, or some other stuff that I want to do in the future. But the logic should be the same as tab container. So it works by adding the nodes, and I would add them directly on this, and then I create a bridge between the external environment with the tab through the file editor. But then I don't have logic related to symbol crafter, or maybe I do. Yeah, but I think that this is probably the best approach. So I do it like this in the beginning, and then I think about it later. So I think I'm gonna choose this approach. So I'm gonna continue to do the way that I was doing there. Yeah, I'm gonna remove this. I'm pretty sure that this is what happens when you left click here. So this is the menu that is gonna show, and then it's gonna call the callback function from editor null. And I'm probably gonna like have a menu like this for the files, but I can only do the menu after I think about or after I have the rest. The problem is that I think I need to get to the point where all the classes are integrated, so I have a better idea of the stuff that I don't have and things I have to do. Write down this. And maybe I actually should have that. Like maybe I should have the function and just change the logic. Sync tabs resized. But I guess this is just related to the bottom. Yeah, I think that this is just related to the bottom, so I should remove. Yeah, I'm just gonna remove. I'm gonna keep these signals because I'm probably gonna use them at some point. What was the name of the other one? I think it doesn't matter. So this stuff is probably to the thing that it shows there. Like when you hover the tab. And this thing that's yeah, this is the stuff there. I think I'm just gonna try to leave it here. It probably draws the stuff on this one. Yeah, set texture. So I might have to remove because it might be annoying to convert all this logic. As I'm pretty sure this is going to be related to resources or the other classes that they use to parse sync files. 'Cause I'm almost 100% sure that this is going to be the thing that allows them to put the, the thumbnail there that shows when you hover. And it's going to be based on the texture, which is based on those logic. Update thumbnail. And this is related to probably a bunch of other stuff related to the editor. So it's calling. The fuck? I guess it calls. So it calls this function. Yeah, it calls this function from the object. So it gets the texture from this. This is the texture that's gonna set there. That's what I'm trying to understand. So I think that's is gonna be a texture based on the state of the scene, but I don't understand how they set this. Yeah, I think it's gonna be related to the way that this class is gonna work with the other classes. Like I'm not gonna be able to understand just by looking at that function. I need to look at the context. I think it's probably not worth it. Probably what I should do is just comment everything out. It would be kind of nice to have this preview, but I think it's not worth the effort now. Like maybe later, once I have all the other stuff. So I think I'm just gonna comment out this stuff. So ChatGPT says you. I think that it does make sense. So like you initialize the. But then you need to. But I think it's the same thing. So you initialize the symbol crafter node on the file editor. So use memnew on the file editor, and then you keep track of it on the file editor as well, with either a vector or hash map or something like that. And then you add as a child to the other one. So it's like you have two different pointers, two pointers of the same object, but you initialize on file editor. Then when you have inputs on the tab, the name is like the other way around, but you have the input on the file editor tab container to change the state of the tabs, the order, and then you use the pointer on the file editor directly if you want to change the state. That way you can change directly. Like when I switch tabs, I can change directly on the file editor tab container. And then the question is, for what kind of thing would I need a pointer on the file editor from the symbol crafter? I think based on signals, probably. It's like I think probably the best way to do it is to synchronize, should do a hash map on the file editor and synchronize the index of the hash map with the index of the tab container. But if I did it like that, I would have to change every time. Or I do it based on the. Yeah, I think it's better to do it based like a hash map from the path or from the file name to the. The problem is that the file name, but there isn't gonna be the same file name thing. Because if there was, the path would be the same problem. So either the path or the file name to the object. Then like if I state from outside emits a signal to the class, then the class can do something directly with symbol crafter and update the tab container later. Or maybe not even update the tab container, just update the state. And then it would automatically change. Because it is the same object. Yeah, I think that makes more sense. This is actually very interesting. Obviously, for what I'm trying to do, I think that this specific case doesn't matter. Yeah, based on ChatGPT explanation, the main point is to create another process. So this launches another editor, but I can probably create, like there's probably several different things you can do with this, like that I can leave as an option when you click here. Like maybe open another process entirely or do other stuff. So I think I'm just gonna comment this out. Or maybe I don't need to because there isn't anything related to Godot. I'm gonna ask why did I use this native menu here. I'm gonna delete the other files first. I'm gonna go back to this. I'm trying to get to the point where I can compile and just comments everything else out. So I think that the main thing to do is just to get this to compile first, then copy the functions from tab container related to updating the tabs based on the children. And once I do this, I can also copy the dragging functionality. Yeah, the dragging, like the split. Actually, if I do it based on the menu, it's not gonna be that annoying, I think. So probably the best way is to go on these functions. The title one, I think, is gonna be the most annoying to change. And the rest seems to be useful in the beginning. So, This one was the one that I removed. I'm just gonna remove this stuff. So anything related to this context menu, I'll remove, and then later if I want to add, then I'll add it again. Because it's gonna be specific to the way that the component's gonna develop later. So it doesn't make sense to do this. So like this, it's probably related to the add button that I have, but it might be useful to leave this here to add some other logic later. I think if I want to do that, like, it's probably better to just remove, and then if I need, I add it again. Or I do some variation of this. I try to simplify as much as possible. I think I'm gonna remove the entire function, and I'm gonna have to think about this later. I think this function is the one that runs after the inputs on the other one. So yeah, it's on the GUI input function. I'm just gonna leave it like this. I think I'm gonna have to change this anyway because it's gonna be dependent. It's probably gonna be like a totally different thing because I'm gonna do it based on the same logic as the type container. So it's gonna work to update the sync tabs. I'm gonna have to change the names as well. But to do what this function is doing is gonna be based on the add child notify, I think. So I'm just gonna have to either move everything or translate. Or I just call this function from the other one instead. And this one is the most annoying one. This is gonna be annoying as well that I'm thinking about. So I'm gonna have to change the file system presenter class because I didn't do the logic for the different icons based on the patterns of the files. So I have to find the icons, put them on the thing, then change the logic on file system. And I'm probably gonna, so I think I'm just gonna remove, I'm gonna change this. So I'm gonna put if scripts. Then I'll do this later. Hmm. So obviously this is for like changing what's gonna show, I think, on the name. Yeah, on the title of the tab, based on whether or not the file is saved. So I think I'm gonna obviously use this, but it's gonna change, obviously, because here they're using the editor undo redo, and I have to check, just see. I think I can do with the file access, which is the way that they were doing on the editor file system, I think, that I changed to FS model. So you get the modified time, but I'm not really sure if this is like very good that way because it seems to be unreliable in some cases. So there it might be better. Well, the other thing that I was thinking about is that I might have to implement virtualization. So like keep track of the text state with a buffer, with a queue that works as a buffer. That has a limit based on the size of the thing. So I'll do that on Simon Crafter, I think. And get the heights of the. I think they have functions to display visible. And so maybe that it already works that way. Now that I think about it. But the problem is, I think one way would be to read the whole file, but then I think that's not very good. But I think it might be the only way, because you have to like do the difference of the state, I think. Like, yeah, how would I know if the file changes? That's the problem. So I'm gonna ask this to ChatGPT and think about it later as well. Because obviously, like anything else, there's probably a bunch of different strategies, and I have to clarify from first principles, which I think I kind of already have an idea of what's gonna be. Then from those first principles, try to adapt on what I think would be the best way to do it on Godot in the context of the class that I have here. But like the tricky thing is that obviously the pointer is gonna be on multiple different classes, or maybe just the file editor and the other the tab bar. But then like I think the obvious strategy would be to have like a function on the process of this class or something like this. I maybe use another thread on this class that just keeps reading the file that is on the active tab. Then make the active tab based on a variable and make the function based on a variable to determine which file is going to be run. The probably better approach is to use the modified time that I think the file access gets from the operating system, but that's more reliable. And I think you have to do, you can either do based on a timer or do on the process. So you have a frequency like that you do the difference of states. But I'm not really sure if that's a good idea. So it's probably better to do it based on the symbol crafter. Yeah, but then if I do it on the symbol crafter, it's not gonna capture. Maybe it already has some symbol crafter. I know the symbol crafter is gonna send signals when you change the state, but it's like a different thing because obviously it's on the difference of the states. These are also gonna have share comments at all because it's gonna be different obviously. I'll comment this out. This whole thing I'm gonna have share comments out as well. I think it's probably better to comment everything else because I'm gonna have to change anyway. I'm gonna have to like this is gonna be based on get child count probably. But I think it's better to do the rest first. Then I'll come back to this. One of the most challenging parts is thinking about like how the state changes are gonna affect the whole like the relationship between multiple different classes. That's the thing that is kind of hard to think about because I think it is gonna change the way that I'm incentivized to do the logic on this class. There is no that's active. So. I do remember that there is a function to get the current tab. It's probably a different name. Yeah, I guess current tab. Yes. Oh, so this is just to synchronize, I think. So it's just synchronize the inputs because this component would be used in synchronization with the selection on the left of the scenes. So I think this is when you update the state on the scene, then it has to update on this class as well. But it's not, it doesn't matter for me. So I think I can remove this. Yeah, I'm gonna remove. So I think that this is everything. I'm gonna change the name of this. So what can be the name? I'm just gonna leave as tabs. So I'll try to compile. I think from this class, what I have to copy is probably the drag and drop and like these functions here and these functions here. And obviously everything that these functions are gonna need. Just gonna remove everything. think I have to do it differently than the tab container does. So I think I'm not gonna copy the, like I'm not gonna do it indirectly through the node classes because it's better, like if I follow this approach that they follow, where they add the tab bar through these classes through these functions indirectly, I would have to put the data on the node, I think, as a metadata to set the name of the tab based on the path. But I think it's not very good. I think it's probably better to just copy the function and do it directly on the tab on the class, and then I call that function from the other one instead of adding as a child. Then immediately after I change the state of the tab bar, I add the node as a child to the tab bar. Then do the same thing to remove. Because I'm gonna be doing that from the file editor. This is kind of annoying. But I think that, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, this is just because if you change the name of the node, it's gonna run this. I'm gonna stop streaming now. I'm just gonna convert the RAS or think about how to convert the RAS off stream because I'm kind of tired already. But I think it's gonna be easier than I was thinking it's gonna be. Like the hardest part is thinking about the relationship between the classes and not finishing implementing this. I think all that I have to do now is to look into these functions that I talked about. Maybe the dragging is gonna be annoying, but I think that's from what I remember. What I remember is gonna call. It's just gonna call functions from the tab bar like this. So there isn't like any logic besides these like small things. Yeah, this is just using functions from tab bar. So I think it's gonna be easy to copy these functions. And so like these are the main ones, and they are the ones that are. Oh, actually, these ones are might be annoying because they are the ones that actually move the nodes on the tree. Yeah, these ones I think actually are gonna be annoying because on these ones it's gonna be different because I'm gonna have to change the states. But maybe not actually, because like if I have the pointer on the file editor, then it doesn't matter. Actually, it might matter because it might destroy the. But I think I can put a signal to. Yeah, I have to think about. This might be annoying actually. These two functions. The way that it works is that it's gonna. On this one is the function that the control node class has. That the viewport is gonna process the inputs, and then somewhere along the line is gonna see if the control node has this function. If the control node has this function, which is subscribed using a macro on the class you want to implement drag and drop, then the viewport's gonna run the function for the control node, which is the logic you put here. For the tab bar is a little bit weird, I think, because the tab bar also has the logic, but the one that is gonna run is this one, should drop the data. This is the last parts of the drag and drop. And it's gonna call this function passing these other two as callbacks. And what these functions are gonna do, I think this one is gonna change the index of the tabs, I think, or switch the tabs on the tab bar based on so it gets both controls based on the tab index for the nodes that are children of the tab container. Then uses the node function to move the childs. And then the other one is gonna move them on the tree, I think, using this function here. So it gets all the information from one of the nodes, then it's gonna remove that node from its current parent, and it's gonna add to the destination. So this is when you move one tab to another place on the scene. And the thing is, I think I'm not gonna implement this type of split here. It looks like it's not working. Oh shit. Yeah, so it's a different thing. Because on Godot, in order to be able to do this, you have to implement the drag and drop on the actual class that is going to display here. So I would have to implement the drag and drop on the whatever node that I want to use as a child of the tab container, which is very annoying because if you want to have flexibility and be able to add any node you want as a child of a tab container, you can't obviously like implement the drag and drop functionality for that node because the node might already have its own drag and drop functionality. So because of this, it doesn't allow you to drop the tab bar in the middle of the container because that area is from the target node, which is the control node that is a child of the tab container, and not the tab container itself. It's only the tab container itself when the tab container doesn't have any children. But I think that if I do the split, I'm gonna do it based on like the selections on pop-up menu. So this is like a separate thing. But here is gonna be annoying, I think, because you have to move them on the tree, the node on the tree, that is a child of the tab container. And based on the way that I'm gonna try to do things there, I'm gonna have the pointer of one of these nodes, or like of both of the nodes on the file editor. So the thing that I'm not sure is that if I remove the nodes using this class here, if I have to update the state of the file editor, or if it's not going to be a problem because the file editor is going to have the pointer to the nodes. But I think it will be a problem because when you remove the nodes, it's probably going to delete the memory, and then when you add, yeah, but I'm not really sure actually. I think it doesn't, I don't remember. I think it doesn't delete. But it probably changes the state depending which node you are using. And I have to figure out, yeah, I think it doesn't delete the memory. Yeah, it doesn't delete because you have to use queue free. Otherwise, you're gonna leak memory when the application shuts down. Yeah, so it doesn't delete the memory. So I think that for the memory, it's not a problem because the file editor is gonna have the pointer to the class. But it's going to be a problem if the class implements additional logic with the notification, and I have to synchronize. But I think that I can just put a signal on here, or I can connect the signal before I add the node to the class here. I connect the signal from the file editor, based on the signals that are emitted for each node when they are removed or added. Just gonna be this one, and some other. As I think it's just annoying, but it's not that hard to figure out. And I think probably I don't need to. Actually, I think I'm not gonna implement this drag and drop because the drag and drop to switch tab bars on the same tab bar, it's implemented by the tab bar class. I think that's how it works. So the tab bar also has drag and drop logic, if I remember correctly. So I don't need to implement the other one because I'm only gonna have one class. Unless, but if I do it on the split, then I can use the file editor. I can implement the drag and drop on the. Actually, not. It might be better to implement. So maybe I'll implement it later once I implement the split. Because like I'm thinking about the situation where you have when you split like this and you want to move one tab to the other. But the thing is, I don't want to be able to move these tabs like outside to other. But maybe it is a good idea to allow to. But actually not because it's gonna be different classes. But I think it's not gonna work automatically because of that. And this is the weird thing about the drag and drop, is that like you can call the viewport can call one of the functions that is a part of the cycle of the drag and drop for one instance of the class, but then call the other function from another instance. So as long as they are the same type, so it can call like can drop data for one tab class instance and call drop data for the other class instance, even though like so like it splits the cycle between different types or different instances of the same type, but it doesn't allow you to do the same thing for when you have different types. So you can't call can drop data for a tab container to another class type because it wouldn't work. I think that's how it works. So it also has the functions here as well. So these ones I think are for switching between the same components, and the other ones are for switching between different components. But I think either way it's not going to be hard to implement. And the rest of the functions, instead of doing in the way that they are doing there through the node class, I can just copy the functionality and I can call them directly from the FileEditor class. I think that's probably better to do it. Because the FileEditor is going to be the thing that removes and adds the nodes anyway. And so this is another thing I should. So the button obviously I can reuse from the file find and replace bar, this close icon, or from the window. And I think it's not hard as well, just because the normal tab container also has logic to close the tabs, I think. I think it's probably when you remove, so it's going to be on the remove child notify. And now I don't remember if there is an icon to close. I'm gonna stop streaming now, and I think I'm just gonna spend some time thinking about it. Maybe I'll translate some of the class. And the next thing to do is just merge these functions from tab container into the other one. Then I can think about. So I'm gonna have to change based on the like. I'm gonna have to make it based on the name of the file as well on this class. And then I'm gonna have to do like some additional logic on the file editor to keep track of both pointers. But I think probably I'm gonna test this first, just see how it looks visually, like on its own, once I merge with the tab container logic. Then once I do this, I'm gonna test on both using the file editor to see if it's gonna put the file. I'm gonna write down this stuff about the split because I forgot, but I'm not really sure if it's worth it. Should do this now, or I should like leave to way after. It's gonna be kind of annoying. Maybe it's not that annoying actually. Yeah, I can get the. I can just change the order of the tree based on the current tab. The child current tab child. But it might be annoying, sure, but I think it's better to do this later once I have the whole state of everything. And I connect this class with the other ones, because then, yeah, it's better to make sure that everything else works first. Then I'll think about this. I think once I have these things, I think there isn't anything else that I need to do to finish this file editor class. Because the rest of the functionality that might be that I might implement is going to depend on other things. So the next thing to do after this class is going to be the terminal class. Then the visualization class, simulation. I think once I begin the simulation, I think I'm gonna do a cycle on SkyDraw. I want to do a feedback loop system. Like it's gonna be a spiral. In order to like connect all the components and like loop over the stages over and over again. And to make it easier to think about like the sequences of steps to do. So probably gonna be back in a couple of days and I'm gonna do some of this stuff off stream. So next time either I'm gonna explain what I did or I'm just gonna start the other component, which is gonna be the terminal. As far as I can remember, that's the only thing I have to do on this class, but maybe I'll think about other stuff that I have to do for this component. But yeah, either I'm gonna continue on this one or start the other one. So see you next time.